Liar. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hello, everybody. How you doing? How you doing out there? It is Wednesday, June 5th, 2024. Time for another show. Not that I'm quite ready for it or anything. And, I don't know. Some sort of slight summer bug, I guess, circulating at this point. And affecting the sound. I'm unhappy with the sound of the voice this morning. But okay, everything else seems to be A-okay, even though I don't know, somehow ran out of time this morning. And am just catching up and trying to get the feel for what people are talking about on the various social media today. I don't know. The thing that kind of distracted me was, I guess somebody, I didn't even investigate who, because it just seemed so dumb. But somebody, I guess, covering for Trump and his 34 convictions. And by the way, it is the first Wednesday that we have spent with Donald Trump as a convicted felon. And that's exciting news. Tomorrow will be the second Thursday. So, coming around to the first full week, the end of the first full week of his being a convicted felon. And I just thought I would remind you of all of that. But people already, of course, coming to his defense. They were doing that anyway. And I happened to notice that somebody, I guess, wrote something up. They were circulating it online, unattributed, which is just as well. Came from the Wall Street Journal. I'm sure some conservative flack or another, but maybe they could surprise me. But basically making the excuse of, well, couldn't we all be guilty of felonies? You better hope that the feds never decide to go through your records and find out that you, and he lists a litany of what I guess would be petty felonies that he assumes most people will recognize as things I've done. One of which is, well, the first one right out of the bat is, well, how about the time you borrowed a Valium from a friend? I have not done that. All right. But I guess I could see where somebody who has a prescription for Valium and has left their Valium somewhere where you would ordinarily have taken it with you but forgot to do so, and another friend has the same prescription, maybe? Why you would email about that or why that would be on records in your laptop, I have no idea. But let's say it does happen. But then he goes on to list another couple of offenses, all of which are, I guess, understandable as it was in a movie. Oh, is that right? Okay. Greg says it was something. All right. Well, at any rate, just various things like, well, what about if you overstate the value of your home in applying for a bank loan, or if you overstate the value of things that you donated to Goodwill and try and take that off on your taxes? And I'm sure that has, yes. Right, okay, now I remember the movie that you're talking about, Greg. Okay, we'll discuss that in just a moment. But what if you do all of these things? And of course, I don't know, it was interesting, and it leaves out the part about where there's a prosecutor and a jury who decide, well, are they materially, is the misstatement, one, was it your intention to misstate the value of these things, and was it your intention to do so for some other reason, some other pecuniary gain? And was your statement of value of these things so completely out of line with the standard of a reasonable person's estimation that we should convict you for it? That's why we have prosecutors and juries to decide. Prosecutors to decide whether or not they're wasting juries' time with things like, well, you said your house was worth $750,000, but it's worth $749,000. That would be something that you would say, I'm not going to the jury with that. They will say that's not a material misstatement. But if you say, and if you overestimate the value of things you gave to Goodwill, well, all of these things, just don't do them, for one thing. But if you do them, did you do them with intent to defraud? And how much are you talking about, and what's the difference? And are you within tolerances? But if you, of course, are stating, well, some days my property is worth $10 billion and some days my property is worth $100 billion, then you can say, nah, that seems to make a material difference. And if you are also getting bank loans that you're not entitled to as a result of that, or breaking campaign finance law, or defrauding voters in an election or something like that, well, that will make a difference. And borrowing a Valium, you shouldn't do it for medical reasons, but it could be done. But does it change the course of an election? Probably not. Does it make a material difference in your tax bracket or make you more or less likely to get a home loan at a favorable rate? No, probably not. And then finally, was there intention to do it, and does the jury care? And I don't know, somehow that all got left out. And if you can convince a jury 34 times, 408 times if you count all the votes that had to be cast in order to get to a unanimous verdict on 34 counts, then, some of the things that you did that you thought weren't such a big deal, if 12 people think that it is a big deal and they're willing to put on a 6-week trial in order to prove it, then you're in trouble. But the problem is that that's not the case for the normal run-of-the-mill things that whoever this columnist was. Anyway, it was just interesting that they left the prosecution, a 6-week case, and they left the unanimous jury completely out of the situation. Well, what if you did these things? Well, then we'll check into you. And by the way, someone ought to check into this guy, perhaps, and find out exactly what's on his laptop. Anyway, I don't know. It's now a cottage industry for which he's probably underreporting his income, and we should check into that. Good morning, Greg Dworkin. How are you?
How are you? So the movie was starting over with Burt Reynolds.
I see.
And he said something in the crowded shopping aisle. I need a Valium, and like 20 people offered it to him. So I think that's
a criminal
what
offense, sir. Yes.
Well, I mean, really, people make so much of this criminal offense stuff. I mean, it's just really over the top. I mean, for example, Donald Trump, as you pointed out, had a 6-week trial at the end of which he could cancel his subscription at any time. And people are making a big deal of this. I don't understand. Like, what's going on here?
No, tell me the point. You be the first person to say you didn't commit a crime like that. I don't know. It's just very interesting that it leaves the whole fail-safe part out.
As it happens, since you brought that up, I actually have 2 pieces today that I want to talk about that reference sort of exactly that concept in a different way.
Well, this was on purpose.
Yeah, well, you
caught
that.
Me. I was with intent.
Because David
now
and
I'm
I
in
never
trouble.
talk about what I'm doing on the show for reasons which I don't understand. He just lets me talk and then gets surprised, and then is responsible for it. So it's his fault,
Yeah.
So.
Well, you know how it is, and most juries will let me off.
Well, that is how it is. So John Storr, the editorial board, had a tweet this morning that I had saved, and it says, I think we're getting close to Biden and Trump telling the same story about Trump. Biden's like, he's a criminal, he's a crook, he's going to do some crimes if he's president again, and Trump is saying, yeah.
Well, at least they're in agreement.
I will.
They should debate that, except that they're on the same side. All right.
Right. But perhaps more relevant and more important is this absolutely depressingly hilarious article in the New York Times interviewing 11 undecided voters.
Oh, well, that's it.
5 of which are leaning to Biden, 3 of which are leaning to Trump, and 2 to RFK, and 1 thinks maybe she won't vote. But what's hilarious and depressing is the discussions that they have. Long discussion, long article.
Yeah.
Amongst the group, in a focus group led by Frank Luntz and others. And it's quite funny. So the moderator said, so how does the Trump conviction affect your vote? One person says, well, how's he going to run the presidency from jail? It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, good, right.
Now, the conversation I want to direct you to several times over in this piece is between Ben, who's a white guy from Texas, a college advisor, and Jonathan, 37, who's a black guy from Florida, who's an operations manager, whatever that is.
Okay. You know, the game, Operation. Bzz.
Yeah, I remember that.
Well, he manages that.
And how you manage it. So Ben says,
I know
now it's down to voting for the convicted felon or voting for Biden, the super old out of touch guy. I don't like either of these choices, but I think I'm going to go with the old guy losing his mind over the convicted felon who's probably going to be out for blood. It's like I'm in Poland trying to choose between the Nazis and the Soviets, but I'm probably voting for Biden. I don't know.
Does this mean he's voting for, which is he, Soviets? I can't tell. All right.
So Logan, who's from Oklahoma, chimes in and says, for me, it's exactly what Ben said. Logan's a lawyer.
I see.
It's the real fear of the retribution. I think we got skin to teeth thin on our democracy staying together. And this time, he knows where the pitfalls are, and he needs to appoint people who can really get retribution. Jonathan from Florida says, this is the fear mongering that the left wants. They want you to be swayed. And Logan, the lawyer, says, no, it's not.
No.
Jonathan says, they want you to say he's a convicted felon. Maybe I shouldn't vote for him. And Logan says, Jonathan, I'm a smart guy. No left-wing or right-wing media has any effect on me. I'm a veteran of the U.S. Marine Corps, and it's not that anyone is scaring me. It's just what I've seen from people in power. It's real. January 6th was real. People died, and that was over in an election. And other people trying and said, no, left-wing party is making Donald Trump do this. And Jonathan said, yeah, but it's such a small, petty crime to charge a former president with. So now he goes from he wasn't guilty. Okay, he's guilty, but now it doesn't matter. And they all agree with him. Yeah, it's a small crime. And the other guys are saying, well, I really don't think that the left wing or the Democrats really had anything to do with it. Okay. And this is where it gets funny. And Ben, the guy who couldn't decide between the Soviets and the Nazis, says, the guy tried to write off his bribe. And okay, maybe it's not illegal, but he's supposed to set a freaking example. And as far as porn stars go, he could have set a better example for who to have an affair with. And he goes on to say later, she wasn't even attractive.
Oh, boy.
Right? He says, you're saying it's all like a political theater and farce and whatnot, but he was having an affair with a porn star, and not a particularly attractive one at that. There's so many wonderful porn stars out there.
I guess.
But Jonathan says, look, that's not a crime. And Ben says, Jonathan, after talking to you, I think I'm voting for Biden now.
All right. Weird.
Right? No, it gets weirder.
Oh.
Okay. So Ben goes on to say that part of the reason he thinks that he would wind up not voting for Trump is, remember, this is Ben, the guy who couldn't decide between the Nazis and the Soviets, says, well, the thing is, Trump wasn't good. How am I supposed to vote for somebody who couldn't even cover up a $130,000 bribe? I mean, if he can't do that, if he's not good at it, if he's how am I going to vote for him?
Yeah, we need you to cover things up. What's wrong with you?
So my point here is undecided voters, God bless them.
Okay, that was nice of you, because I was going to interject. What a bunch of dummies, but
right.
No.
Here's the exact quote from Ben. Why are you undecided? He said, well, a couple of people have mentioned a massive judicial conspiracy of everybody going after Trump. Let's talk conspiracy math here. The sheer number of people who would have to be working together to get something like this working just boggles the mind. Have you ever tried to get 4 people to agree on what to order for pizza? And there's supposed to be a conspiracy to screw Trump somehow? I don't see it. And at the end of the day, fine, okay, I'm going to side with Jonathan on this one, saying, what's the big deal about bribing Stormy Daniels? But I want a president, here's the quote, I want a president who's going to be able to cover up a $130,000 bribe to Daniels, and if he can't pull that off, I'm not going to trust him with the nuclear football. I'm leaning toward Biden. That's his reason. So you want to talk about policy with me? You want to talk about Ukraine? You want to talk about the border? You want to talk about, peace in the Middle East? No. It's about whether or not you're competent at covering up a bribe. The implication here is, of course, Biden probably does this all the time, but he's so good at it, you don't even know. That's the kind of president I want.
I don't know whether. I mean, there's no chance that I'm going to be able to figure out what's going on in his head.
Well, he's an undecided voter. I'm just telling you.
Nothing.
God bless him.
His head, but holy mackerel. Yeah, I don't know. I have a feeling that he doesn't really even mean that, but okay. It's certainly a good quote. It doesn't make any sense, but it's a good quote. I'm wondering whether he really, is just saying that he just doesn't think that this is a very big crime, and that, look, I don't care if somebody has an affair. I mean, and a lot of people do say that. That's fair
fine,
enough. I think, I don't know what this rest of the stuff is. Why can't he be competent enough to cover it up? I don't think you really mean that. But okay, if you do, then I guess maybe it's your assumption that everybody's covering things up, and anybody would be better than Trump. I don't know. Well,
sometimes
they
what
just
the
need
bottom
to fill
line
space.
here is everybody has their own reasons for voting, and of course it's
also,
their constitutionally given right to decide how to vote however they wish.
Yes, so they
And
have no
most of the
particular
reasons
right
that people
to do it.
choose to vote are absolutely absurd and ridiculous, but that's democracy, folks.
Yes. You just can't go around saying that person's reasons aren't good enough and they don't count.
Right. If you want to keep your
mean,
sanity,
you can.
as somebody who's really into politics, don't pay too much close attention to focus groups with undecided voters. They will drive you nuts.
Well, you got no business reading any of that. If you're decided, fine, terrific, God bless you, go your way and do your thing. And if you're looking to undecided voters like, they're just like me, they'll give me guidance. No. There are many, many, many reasons why somebody might be undecided. And it's almost, I don't know, to me it seems almost assuredly the case that none of them will be mine. And I'm just not interested in what they have to say. I'll be blessedly undecided until I decide, and I really don't want to talk to people who, don't. Who also, what's the point? I need advice from somebody who doesn't have any advice for me. Forget it. Never mind.
Right. So, how does this relate to the conversations we usually have?
I don't know. I'm not sure. Where are we?
Well,
what day is it? Yes.
Tell me, based on this discussion with some of these undecided voters, why the college protests about the Gaza situation are going to be determinative.
Oh, yeah, I don't know. Did they know? Did anyone mention them?
Not really.
Yeah, I mean, it must have occurred to somebody to say so, or maybe they asked, and everybody said, I don't care.
Yeah. I didn't read every single word of this incredibly long article.
I wouldn't blame you. And if you can't decide between the Nazis and the Soviets, I don't know that you're going to have an opinion as to Israel or Hamas either. So I don't know. Okay. But yes, that's true. And certainly the protests won't ring true unless it's, contributing to the general feeling that people have that, I don't know, things, whether they be crimes or otherwise, are out of control. But, my guess is that none of them... Certainly none of them are interested in what's happening at Colombia.
By word search here.
Yeah.
And, of course, the Trump trial comes up in the Trump version a lot. Gaza and Hamas did not.
Yeah, all right. I wouldn't think so. If you're undecided.
Just interesting stuff. Okay. And speaking of actual real voters,
yes.
This is Wednesday. That means that there's an awfully good chance that yesterday, Tuesday, was primary day somewhere. And, in fact, it was.
Right.
And we didn't learn a whole lot. The primaries were in New Mexico, Montana, New Jersey, and South Dakota. As it turns out, that only New Mexico had Nikki Haley on the ballot. The others didn't. They were uncontested, so they don't tell us anything. And in New Mexico, Donald Trump wins 84.5% of the vote. Nikki Haley gets 8.6, not, especially impressive.
Not even the 15, okay.
Not even 15, not even 10. Uncommitted gets 3.3, so, 15% voted for somebody else. But that's normal, and that's about what Biden gets in the same stuff. For example, in New Mexico, Trump wins by 76, Biden wins by 74, Biden wins by 83 in Montana, Trump wins by 82. So you really didn't learn much of anything there. The Senate and House primaries also took place. To me, the most notable thing there is that Andy Kim is going to be the Democratic nominee.
Yes.
And that's wonderful because, he's a really nice guy, young progressive who beat the system and tore down New Jersey's county line voting, which is to say the powers that be in the county would give you special preference on the ballot. He got rid of that. Kim did, almost single-handedly with a quick
that's
decision.
Just a good old, it's an old-fashioned machine-type operation thing that doesn't make any particular sense except to control the outcome of elections. And Andy Kim said, why wouldn't we just leave it so that people can decide on their own, even though we have lots of undecided voters, and some of them are pretty dumb.
On
just
the
go in there and
Republican
decide.
side, though, what was interesting is that a fellow named Curtis Bashaw won.
Not Curtis Bashaw. Who's that?
This piece from the New Jersey Monitor, which is a nonprofit states newsroom outlet, has the headline, Curtis Bashaw defeats Trump-endorsed candidate to win GOP Senate nod. So the person Trump was pushing loses.
Well, when Trump touches you,
45,
you die.
46 to 39. So
That's
it's,
good enough.
just interesting that at least in New Jersey, Trump's word didn't carry much weight.
Yeah, well, much of New Jersey knows him. Northern New Jersey knows him as well as New York. Okay, well, that's interesting. That's good news in my view, although sometimes it's great when you have a Trumpy wackadoodle, but it's scary every time they do it. Sometimes you defeat them soundly because of how weird they are, but it's a bad time. It makes the summer unbearable.
Right. So Basho had a good line. He said, in case you didn't hear, I'm running not against one, but two machine Democrats this November.
Oh, wow.
Through because it's a three-way race because Menendez the gold bug is
the one that got
also
thrown out
there as an independent, although he can't get any staff, so he's going to run his own campaign.
That's
but
how
he
independent
says,
he is.
Basho says, in case you didn't hear, I'm running not against one, but two machine Democrats this November.
Wrong.
Though a federal judge barred the use of county lines in this year's Democratic primaries, Republican primary ballots included a line in all but three counties. The balloting practice, unique to New Jersey, groups candidates with a common slogan seeking separate offices in a single row or column on the ballot. That's been found to give the candidates who receive it in an advantage. I've seen it mostly in columns, first column, so it's the first thing your eye sees.
Yeah.
And you tend to vote, if you don't know, you tend to vote for the first person. So that's one of the reasons why it's such an insidious system. It doesn't look like it's favoring somebody, but it's absolutely favoring somebody.
There's no barrier to going to the second column, but that's just not what human behavior
Well, they
is
wouldn't
like.
put you in the second column. That was the thing. They'd leave it blank, and the third column would be blank, and then you'd be in the fourth column.
Yeah, and there's nothing preventing your eye from going all the way out there, and your hand, because it's one of those voting machines.
Or the fifth or the ninth.
It's on the ballot, right? Yeah. It's just way out there, and those blank lines, they carry a subtle message of this person is this far removed from the mainstream.
Yeah, exactly.
Is what it kind of translates to.
Basho, a real estate developer, emerged from party conventions with county lines in 12 counties, including Republican-rich Ocean County, the state's single largest source of GOP primary votes. Party support wasn't his only advantage. He went into the final weeks of the race having outraised Trump's candidate 3-1. And
who's Trump's candidate?
The majority of both candidates' fundraising came from their own pockets.
Okay. Really?
Well, they're Republicans.
Okay. Both of the Republicans. I was like, that wouldn't be the case for Andy Kim. You mean, okay, only for the Republicans.
No, the two Republicans.
Okay, well, that seems to make a certain amount of sense. And so who?
So it'll be an interesting race in the fall, but I think Andy Kim's the next senator from New Jersey.
That's
and that'll be a good thing.
It doesn't look like a great deal like, well, all right. This dude, hotelier. He's or did they say hotelier? So a real estate developer and a hotel owner who's not the Trump-endorsed candidate wins, and something and Ocean City and or Ocean County. Who's the other candidate? I don't even know. Here's
the Trump person who lost?
Yeah.
I don't know. Don't care. Some lady.
That's it. There we are. Christine Serrano Glasner, mayor of Mendham. All right.
Yeah.
Well, yes, it remains the mayor of Mendham. Good luck, mayor.
Yeah. I don't know exactly what Curtis Basho's background is. Apparently, he was the sommelier at the Grand Budapest Hotel.
I guess. Hotelier. Okay. And he spent all of his own money, and so did the mayor of Mendham.
Right.
Which, all right, they got money in Mendham.
Right.
Less now, but
so in reading that story about the undecided voters and how they were reacting to Trump and the jury verdict.
Yes.
For some reason, Cal Cunningham jumped into my head.
Oh, that's
all right. Remember Cal Cunningham?
Yeah, I remember his pen and ink rendering. I think in the Wall Street Journal, wasn't he?
The year was 2020.
Okay.
And he was running against Tom Tillis for senator in North Carolina.
No, all right. Yeah, all right. No, I didn't remember him correctly, but now, all right. Help me. Yes.
And I put from Wikipedia, I put together some of the stats from that era. It's in the list I sent you.
All right.
In the poll aggregation 270 to win, just before the election, Cal Cunningham was up 47-44 over Tom Tillis. And in Real Clear Politics, basically the day before the election, Cunningham was up 45 47.6 to 45. So he basically had a 2.8% lead in all the polls, and he lost by 1.7 when the actual election happened. And the thing that made Cal Cunningham of interest, not just that he was a loser, is that he was ahead, but then all of this information about him having an extramarital affair came out in October.
But we don't care about those or something.
Well, that's the point, really.
Oh.
Here's a case where people said they don't care. The polls didn't change. He was ahead in the polls. He lost.
Well, he didn't have the skills to cover it up, clearly. And that's the problem.
I mean, this happens all the time. But this is the most recent one that occurred to me. There may have been an even more recent one, but it's not in my memory. So when people say, this, the fact that he's a crook, that he's, okay, I understand that he's convicted. I'm not even questioning the conviction. I'm questioning how important it is. But it's in there. It gets in there. Even these undecided voters have heard about it.
That's all they're talking about.
Yeah.
And here, this is a fairly significant lead that just disappears for no apparent reason. I mean, it's as good a guess as any, the affair. But I guess if that is the case, if that's your explanation, then you got to be thinking that come time to cast your ballot in the presidential election, and you're like, well, one guy is just...
If the Democrats do their job and keep repeating it over and over, and that's going to be the theme after the break.
Oh, okay. Excellent. The convicted felon or the affair?
Convicted felon, and you better keep repeating it.
Okay.
And the Republicans will have their line that they keep repeating. Biden is old and doddering. Problem with that is it's, you see the debate and it's gone.
Sup, fam? It's your boy Darwin, a.k.a. Darwin_Darko, a.k.a. the most reasonable man in America, a.k.a. KITM's senior black correspondent. You might remember me from such recordings as Spacemen vs. Space Cadets and We Need to Talk About Joe Biden. Today, I want to bring you good news about that thing you've been struggling with. Do you suffer from giving too much of a damn? Do you turn on the series of tubes and find yourself outraged at the particular way some news organization strung some sentences together only to realize, nope, this is not some fictional hellscape? Well, guess what? You no longer have to accept the life of giving too much of a damn. You can do something about it, because even you, yes you, can be a show contributor. Now I know what you're thinking. Hey, Mr. Most Reasonable Man in America, I'm not some professional podcast talking guy. Don't worry about it. Do you have a smartphone or some other electronic recording device? Well, that's all you need. You too can have a segment where you can read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Fair warning though, side effects may include general punditry, having opinions and hot takes, getting stuff off your chest, and hearing your own voice. If your recording lasts longer than 5 to 7 minutes, please consult kagrox@gmail.com. That's KAGROX@gmail.com.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Greg Dworkin is still with us. We're still rounding up stories. I had forgotten all about old Cal Cunningham, was it? And I've forgotten again since the 5 seconds that we've been off on the break. But yeah, that is a very interesting example. And just there's no way to figure on it. There's no way to do it except to say, well, it happened once. Maybe it'll happen again later. That's it. All right, well, I think you're on mute, which is not just me talking over you so successfully.
No, that's me coughing. So.
Okay. That's
but you
fine.
Can't hear it because I'm on mute.
Right. That's you. Yeah, it's better that you don't cough over me. But if you want to just talk over me, that's nothing.
Well,
I can't do
I
anything
don't want
about
you
that.
to get a computer virus.
All right. I don't know. I didn't know whether you were answering me and saying, I had great observations to make, and I had... all right. Well, what's next?
Yeah, I was saying. That was a brilliant observation, David,
Yes.
but you couldn't hear me say it because I was on mute. So.
And coughing it out.
So
Polls say...
interesting things
Yes.
happen. So Trump is a convicted felon. He's basically a crook. I mean, if you want to make it simple and keep the language simple, he's a criminal.
Yes. Well, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And this happens And it was on Thursday, so you and I didn't get a chance. You did, but on Friday, but I didn't get a chance to talk about it with you until Monday.
Right, but I said what you would say.
Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. 5 days later,
Old
on
news.
Monday, Democrats are complaining that Democrats aren't going after the jugular and trying to ding Trump on being a convicted felon.
The old jugular ding.
And because
What is
they're
that?
not making a lot of noise about it, it's all Republicans complaining that this opens the floodgates and now we're going to put you all in jail and
All right.
wipe you out. And we have every right to, because look what you did to Donald Trump. And,
Oh, I
you know,
thought we
I'm
were
thinking,
gonna put
okay,
them
this
in
is the
jail.
usual dynamic here. I mean, this is a situation where decent people give the recently deceased 24 hours
Ha.
before, on the 25th hour, they point out he's a crook and a bum and the world
I
is
see.
better off without him.
Could be. I mean,
And so Biden has a speech, and he basically calls Trump a convicted felon who snapped after the last election.
okay.
Now, President Biden is relatively limited in terms of what he could say. Candidate Biden can say whatever he wants. It's a fine distinction that he has to be careful about making. Presidents always do when you're an incumbent, but at the same
real
time, he's got
presidents.
surrogates, and the surrogates have to step up there. And the surrogates on the left are doing exactly that. And the centrist surrogates are trying to figure out, well, how do I look like a decent centrist person if, and basically that's not going to happen. Biden is setting the tone, and they're going to say Trump's a felon and he snapped and he's crazy and you should listen to some of the crazy stuff he speaks.
Well,
And that's what we're going to hear. Celinda
good,
Lake,
that's a
the
centrist
Democratic
position.
pollster, says with a conversation with Greg Sargent on the Trump convictions, Democrats need more repetition because remember, adults learn by repetition. Let me say that again. Adults learn by repetition, and a louder echo chamber, responses to upcoming events, sentencing appeal, all through a character matters kind of lens. That's what they need to do.
Okay.
And that's why when Biden said Trump snapped, that's what a normal person would say. That's what a normal person would react to this with. Even our friends, the undecided voters, get it. Their only issue is how big a deal is it really? But they get that he did it. They get that he's guilty. They
Okay.
get that it's icky.
Ha. Yeah.
And that's the kind of feelings you bring to the voting booth with you.
All right.
And then
Not
they
me. I've
pointed
only
out
been
something that
truth
the
in
Democrats have also been slow to point out, which is, if you recall the conversation, and Trump is really into retribution, and that's not a good thing. So these are the sorts of things that Democrats have to hammer on between now and the election. I
All
think
right.
if they do, they'll win.
Well, good. Then they ought to. It's a good plan. Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, I was excited to start seeing some of the exploitation of that news. On the other hand, I mean, people do take their time getting around to it. And, of course, if you're the first one out of the gate saying right away, Trump is now a convicted felon, that doesn't mean that everybody's going to see that. And 90% of the people who are saying, how come nobody's saying he's a convicted felon, will not have seen you say that he was a convicted felon.
Well, twice this week, Biden said, and here's the quote, "It's reckless, it's dangerous, it's irresponsible for anybody to say this was rigged just because they don't like the verdict, just because they don't like the outcome."
Right.
And then he added, something snapped in this guy for real. I mean, it's literally driving him crazy. He's unhinged.
Yeah,
So
all right.
he's getting in all the stuff he needs
That's a
to
good
get
one.
in a way that like normal people would say, normal people would hear, normal people would understand. And so what does it mean to be a convicted felon in New York State with regard to voting? No, the guy's a crook and something snapped.
Yeah. No, I like the snapped idea, and most people can relate to that. And even if you, for whatever reason, still wanted to hold open the possibility that you might support Trump, like if you're that kind of undecided voter, that might be the language that does it. Yeah, you know what? I mean, he really did. It has room in it for saying, well, he still was a okay guy at heart, but he had this trauma and it broke him. And well, we don't want that. Okay, and that could be reason enough. Of course, these guys never come around to that conclusion, and they argue about
I don't
what
want
else.
an unhinged, snapped guy back in the White House. I mean,
right.
it's that simple.
That's who you don't trust with the nuclear football. Unhinged, snapped guys. That's a bad idea. Don't tell me.
who's not even competent enough to hide a bribe to a porn star who's not even that attractive.
Right,
I mean,
and that wasn't even my favorite porn
those
star.
are my reasons for not voting. Don't at me, you know?
Yeah. I think the reason he's undecided is he's too busy deciding which porn stars he likes, and his attention is elsewhere.
Yeah.
You
none
gotta
of the
get your head
women
in the
jumped
game,
in
pal.
that conversation, by the way, with those 11.
Yeah, I noticed they were all undecided men speaking about that subject.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't have gone there. How old was that guy, did they say? I'm curious.
Which guy?
The guy who decided that it wasn't his favorite porn star or whatever.
I think he was in his 50s. Jonathan,
Really?
the conservative black guy from Florida, was like 37.
Oh. Well, I don't know what to say about that, but so I'll leave it alone. That's the best thing I can do. That was, yeah, you need to think about the fact that this is all being written down, sir.
Yeah. Anyway, so it was an interesting week for Biden. He's making some minor gains in the polls. There's sentiment that half the country thinks Trump should step down and stop running.
Yes, that's.
And then Biden comes out,
Ordinarily.
as they pointed out on Morning Joe this morning, in regard to something else I'll mention in a moment. Biden had 3 big policy changes this week. One was on Ukraine, his peace proposal for Israel and Gaza,
Yeah.
and an approach to the border in terms of executive orders that would mimic what the bipartisan bill that the House refused to pass was going
Which
to
wasn't
do.
particularly good.
Now, you may not agree with any or all of those proposals, but they're all substantive proposals.
Yes,
Not the kind of thing that
versus
these
the porn
undecided
star.
voters use to decide who's going to be president, but they're all substantive proposals.
Yeah, those guys
So
don't
you
know
have
about them.
so you have Biden doing okay in the polls. You have these substantive proposals, and you have the Trump trial and its results and all the discussion thereafter. So, what does the Republican attack machine do? Rupert Murdoch at the Wall Street Journal today runs a hit piece on Biden on the front page.
Sure, why not?
Behind closed doors, Biden shows signs of slipping. Participants in meetings said the 81-year-old president performed poorly at times. The White House said Biden is sharp and his critics are playing partisan politics. Who do they quote in the article? Mike Johnson and Kevin McCarthy.
Okay.
And that's it. I mean, yeah.
Mike Johnson, at least, is still speaker.
The Oklahoma senator.
No Rick
whose name
Santorum?
I can't even remember anymore.
Mark Wayne Mullen?
Nah, the other one.
Oh, see? All right, well, let's see. Crazy Idiot? That one? No. Langford. Is that right?
Let's see. Who was it? I don't know. Some guy that nobody really cares about.
Damn, Oklahoma, huh?
Here it is.
Not Langford?
Risch. R-A-S-C-H.
Oh, my God. Where's Langford from? Nebraska?
I think Langford's from Oklahoma. Where's Mark Wayne Mullen from?
I thought he was from Oklahoma.
I don't know. Maybe they're all from Oklahoma. Maybe Oklahoma has 3 senators.
Hey, wait a minute. That'd be something.
I don't know who you are. I never
calling
heard
the
you
role
from
of the state.
Oklahoma.
Holy crap! How long has this been going on? There's 101 of you in here. Someone
any
should have
case,
checked this. Yeah.
My point is Kevin McCarthy has been quoted by pieces like Politico as saying McCarthy in public says Joe Biden is losing it, but in private says he's really sharp and professional, and it was really difficult negotiating with him because he knew what he wanted, and he got what he wanted. And I plan on speaking to him every day. It's clear he's in charge of what's going on here. So Kevin McCarthy's a known liar.
Yeah.
And he's basically the source for this article. They go on to say, we interviewed 45 people, many of whom were Democrats who said this is garbage.
Oh. Well,
But
yeah.
Kevin McCarthy says...
Well, I guess those people care
and
more
we
about the
interviewed
election.
45 people.
Oh.
And Kevin McCarthy says this.
What?
And you can't just say it's about Kevin McCarthy. We interviewed 45 people.
Plus Kevin McCarthy. No Rick Santorum this time?
No, well, not by name. I mean, the only name
he might have been 40.
Mike Johnson,
Okay.
Kevin McCarthy. Not that Mike Johnson, Kevin McCarthy, and a Republican senator.
He's from Idaho, as it turns out. Rich.
Idaho, okay. And a Republican senator would have any partisan reason for casting doubt and trying to get this on the front page of the Wall Street Journal in big banner headlines as if it's a scoop.
Republicans don't like
may have something
the
to do with the
Democratic
trial.
president.
It may have something to do with Biden's proposals, which clearly are pretty sharp. And it may have something to do with how the polling has been going for Trump, which is to say half the population wants him to drop out. So
that's really rather remarkable. Okay. By the way, I just want to point out that James Risch is 81 years old.
Oh?
It came up in
And did you
Wikipedia.
say he was from Idaho or Oklahoma?
Yeah, I did. He's from Idaho.
Like Joan, right?
Right. Well,
My friend Joan is from somewhere like that. I can't remember where.
Less than 81 and is now living in Portland. But hey, other than that, they're very similar.
She used to live.
She's a progressive. Yes, that's true. She is
she used
originally
to live in
from
either
Idaho.
Iowa or Idaho.
Yes, or Illinois. One of the I's.
One of those. One of the I states.
Yeah, Hawaii, which has two I's, but at the end.
Well, she lived there twice.
Yeah. All right. Well, Idaho is it. James Risch, I don't know why we don't know anything about him. That's weird.
Why would we?
Yeah, I mean, he's a relatively quiet guy, which is fine by me. I don't know how they got him into this. This is probably the biggest, news coup of his career, getting in the Wall Street Journal.
Yeah.
All right. Well, 81, he probably thought he was
it's an amazing
talking to a
article
different
in
paper.
that it's amazingly bad.
Yeah. That's a bad one. And Kevin McCarthy's a bad idea as a source.
And it's amazingly blatant, too,
But that's Wall Street Journal. That's what the owner's privilege there.
We interviewed Ron Johnson for his opinion on U.S.-Russia relations.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Why are you interviewing him as a source? Well, he knows more about Russia than anybody else.
No.
They pay him.
Ah, that's true. He knows their bank accounts. Maybe that's it. Well, I don't know. And like I said, now I'm suspicious they didn't include Rick Santorum because he hasn't held elective office for a quarter century. But hey, let's interview him and find out what he thinks.
Right. Rick Santorum's name came up on this show, I think, in regard to George Conway taking on Scott Jennings, who was hired by CNN to be a liar. And, of course, the first name I thought of in terms of hiring somebody to be a liar by CNN was Rick Santorum.
Yeah.
I mean, you have these partisan guys on, and you have to
reason.
Understand how partisan they are.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I love my Senator Chris Murphy, but he's a partisan Democrat, and if he gives me an opinion of somebody on the Republican side in the Senate, I don't automatically take it at face value. It depends on the context and, what's going on here.
Yeah. Well, okay. That sounds reasonable. You should be an undecided voter. It's the lawnmower kid from the Trump meme. Yeah. All right. Not.
Right. Apologies for the lawnmower in the background. It's that time of week.
Yeah. All right. Well, no problem. Well, I can't say that, but
I'm just very happy Abby's not barking at it. I mean,
it's remarkable. Okay. Yeah. Well, she's come to peace.
Well, I think she's upstairs hiding in the bathroom.
Oh, okay. Well, that's not great either. Still. All right. Well, that is a substantive issue all by itself. And thank you for addressing it. Okay. Well,
right. Anyway.
Any others?
Here's another article that crossed my threshold, which was of interest. This is from The Guardian, and it's titled, Racial Resentment is a Factor in Violence of 6 January 2021, study says, in the British way of telling us about dates.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Mm-hmm.
Measurable in Trump supporters, psychosocial phenomenon can have consequences for democracy, the authors say.
Thanks.
While political observers are quick to blame hyperpartisanship and political polarization for January 6th, according to a recently published study, racial resentment, not just partisanship, explains the violence. Angered over the claim, promoted by Trump and his closest allies, that heavily black cities had rigged the 2020 election in favor of Democrats, Detroit in particular, but also Atlanta. White voters, some affiliated with white nationalist groups and militias, the others acting alone, stormed the U.S. Capitol in an attempt to halt the certification of the 2020 election. Something we need to be reminded of, and the British papers do a better job of doing that than the American papers who live in a memory hole. What Trump and Republicans did is they tried to make the point that something nefarious was going on in areas that were primarily African American. So David Wilson, dean of the Goldman School of Public Policy at University of California, Berkeley, who published the study with Darren Davis, professor of political science at Notre Dame. Mm-hmm. Notre Dame.
Yes.
The paper, Stop the Steal, Racial Resentment, Effective Partisanship, and Investigating the January 6th Insurrection, relied on a national survey of adults in the U.S. conducted in 2021. Respondents were asked the question, assessing their approval or disapproval of the House Select Committee investigating January 6th, and responded to numerous statements evaluating racial resentment, such as, I resent any special consideration African Americans receive because it's unfair to other Americans, and special considerations for African Americans place me at an unfair disadvantage because I have done nothing to harm them.
All right.
I haven't shot them yet.
Yeah, not yet. I haven't.
The research revealed a correlation between respondents' feelings of racialized resentment and opposition to the House committee on January 6th. Wilson and Davis also pointed to the fact that while a slew of polls show the general public split somewhat evenly over the legitimacy of the House Select Committee, Black Americans overwhelmingly supported the committee's work, and white poll respondents generally opposed it.
That's why I don't like them.
Many of President Trump's supporters believed they were being victimized by election fraud, but they also believed whites were being victimized more generally. And the study comes as a former president and his allies are stoking unfounded fears of non-citizens voting and tainting political outcomes. In other words, they're doing it again.
No questions about economic anxiety.
Yeah, that ain't it.
Well, we discovered that certainly wasn't the case. The January 6th, they tried that for like a year. It was economic anxiety. They all flew in private.
Yeah.
I don't understand what you're talking about.
Exactly. They all flew in on their private jets because they felt like they had no place in the American economy.
Right. I know. I'm being oppressed by black people. They get special considerations.
I'll have to sell my car dealership.
I'm tired of having to, give them special consideration. What special consideration? Charging them more.
Right. Ben Wexler had a tweet I have in the Pundit Roundup that I thought was good.
Okay.
During the impeachment, people yelled, "This should be decided at the ballot box."
Oh. Yes.
So he loses at the ballot box.
Right.
So then you incite a violent mob to storm the Capitol. Well, if he broke any laws, that's up to a jury to decide. So a jury decides he broke a ton of laws.
Yeah.
Well, that should be decided at the ballot box.
Always somewhere else. That's called.
But, that's the closed circle that they
yeah.
the loop.
Well, I guess it only counts properly
Mitch McConnell
for the
does that,
first.
Right? We're not going to decide impeachment here. That should be decided in a court of law.
Yeah.
The court of law decided he's guilty. Well, it's ridiculous that a former president should be, somehow on trial. That's political gamesmanship. It's lawfare.
Yeah, the impeachment part is particularly interesting because that cycle, as described, only works with respect to his first impeachment, which is an amazing thing that there were two, and you got to differentiate. And we should settle it at the ballot box, not here on impeachment over the Ukraine issue. The amazing thing about the second impeachment, of course, is, that there was no opportunity to say, well, we should settle this at the ballot box. Like, we were just at the ballot box, my friend. It was just weeks ago. And guess what happened? He lost at the ballot box. And you know what you should do? Go outside and you tell the Proud Boys who are looking for you with a noose that it should be settled at the ballot box. And it was, in fact, settled at the ballot box. And now you were taking out the ballots and reading them. They're here to beat the crap out of you so that you don't read the ballots. That's the issue. And for about, a span of about 6 hours on that day, they all understood that. And then they didn't anymore. Now they go on the Sunday shows and say dumb things like settle at the ballot box. They should show them the picture of the Senate aides running out of the chamber with the ballot box, by the way.
So the last piece I'm going to do today is something also that happened in the courts yesterday, but it was state court.
Okay.
In the potentially tipping point state of Wisconsin.
Tipping point state, is that a new term for it? Yeah, swing is...
Well, the tipping point is the state that decides the election.
I see. Oh, they don't just call it the swingiest? Okay.
It's not the swingiest. The swingiest of the swing states is the tipping point state.
All right. Very good. All right. Wisconsin, with several crucial counties in it.
Right. So this is by Steve Bannon, but there's many articles about this. This one is from MSNBC, and so free access. Criminal charges in GOP's fake elector scandal reach new heights. The Republicans' fake elector scandal from 2020's now racked up another indictment.
Gasp. That's it.
And that's the state of Wisconsin.
Yeah, I have
What? You have that?
I have the Journal Sentinel story.
The Milwaukee Journal Sentinel reported this morning that Wisconsin Attorney General Josh Call has filed felony forgery charges against 3 officials.
Dun, dun, dun.
Okay, one of them you never heard of. Dane County Judge Jim Troupis happens to be a lawyer.
Oh, yeah, no.
Represented Trump in
heard
Wisconsin.
I've heard the name.
But
yes,
the 2 names you have heard, because we've discussed this a lot on the show, the Cheese, Kenneth Chesborough.
Yes.
Who's indicted yet again.
Ha! Yeah.
And the guy I thought was co-conspirator number 6, Mike Roman.
Oh. Yeah.
Who's been indicted in Georgia and here. Mm-hmm. So Mike Roman really was involved. And
that guy's kind of
maybe
a
it's
scum.
Boris Epstein, but then again, it still might be Mike Roman.
Yeah. And Mike Roman is highlighted as something of a scumbag in this story, by the way. So
a former Trump aide who allegedly delivered Wisconsin's slate of false elector paperwork to a Pennsylvania congressman's staffer in order to get them to Vice President Mike Pence.
Yes. Wisconsin, always enlisting the aid of Pennsylvania to do their dirty work.
Yeah.
That's an odd
thing. Just a reminder, right? Arizona, 18 people have been indicted, including 11 fake electors and 7 Trump aides. Georgia, 19 people were initially indicted, including Trump, though some have since reached plea agreements. Michigan, 16 people have been indicted, and there's other prominent unindicted alleged co-conspirators, and it's very possible that some of those will face related charges. Nevada, 6 people have been indicted, each of whom served as fake electors, and now Wisconsin, 3 people indicted.
All right. Worse than Watergate.
Yeah, it is worse than Watergate.
In terms of the numbers, certainly. And, of course, the crime itself actually worse than Watergate as well, but you can leave that aside. Just sheer numbers of Republican idiots being indicted for this guy. It's much, much worse. Good. I'm glad they indicted Chesborough. Troupis, I remember. He was the guy who, recruited Chesborough to this whole thing. Mm-hmm. And spent the whole time in Wisconsin somehow. But all right, so now he's charged in Wisconsin, so just as well. And
anyway, so there you have the news.
Okay, that is.
Oh yeah, Hunter Biden's on trial. Who cares?
All right, yes, they've selected the jury for that, and then of course
had their opening statements.
Okay, the last I heard was they were on jury selection, and I guess that went pretty quickly because it's not as high profile.
That was Monday, trial. Tuesday. They had opening statements. I think they actually do trials on Wednesdays, unlike New York. So we'll see what happens.
Well, I think the Wednesday thing might have been the judge's. Personal.
Judge Marchand had
scheduling, and you could choose
scheduling issues on Wednesdays, except if the jury needed to meet.
Right. Well, they could do whatever they want. He needed to do other things. He's got in the middle of the trial. You can't spend all your time on the one trial. You got to hear motions and stuff on all the other things going on. Sometimes
community service stuff to do on Wednesdays, which was previously scheduled.
Excuse me, scheduled. Okay. All right. I thought I had to bleep you on that, but no, it turned out to be scheduled. You were talking about. All right. And, what was that? Oh, yes, right. For some reason, we were talking about something that reminded me of this that I had seen somewhere. I guess the complaints about the state courts charging Trump and presidents ought to be immune from that and how dare you, that sort of thing. But that Republicans are now attempting to bring to the floor no chance that they'll be able to get this through in both houses and do things with it. But their latest approach to this is establishing removal and federal jurisdiction for any case brought against a president or former president in state court. Well, he's a federal official. You should have to charge him in federal court. And if you're charged in the state court, something, that's no good. Leave it to the states, except if you don't leave it to the states, and we're from the Federalist Society, except we're not Federalists. I don't really know why that
Eric
works
Swalwell
for them,
said that directly to their committee.
Oh, well, no wonder.
He said, you guys are all for state rights, except if your candidate for president turns out to be a convicted felon. Yeah. And they wanted those remarks stricken from the record for some reason.
Did they get it?
Well, they have the majority.
Yeah, maybe. Well, anyway, I'll put them back on the record. Yeah, it's stupid. And it's amazing that, of course, they'll find they'll find legal support for it from from the Federalist Society, which, of course, this is the definition of federalism. But the Federalists in the Federalist Society might not actually be for a federal system. Therefore, it's the Gimitarian Society. Just Federalist makes it sound like important and having to do with the founders, because there were the Federalist Papers, and these are just the Federalist paper over all my problems guys instead. Very weird, very interesting. They'll try anything to make it look like they're not running a convicted felon for president and supporting him.
Yeah, the interesting thing is he's a convicted felon. He's running for president.
Who is that? Donald Trump?
That would be Donald Trump.
Okay, convicted felon. Well,
TFC.
That is interesting. I will have to talk to some undecided voters about that and see if they know and whether that might be of interest to them in making their decisions.
That's his name, right? Donald J. Trump, CF.
Yeah, in Britain they would refer to him that way, and you'd be trying to figure out what sort of knight he was, but in fact it just stands for convicted felon. Yeah, all right. Well, okay. Thanks very much. That brings us almost to the end of the hour, and we have Thursday still to deal with, and so go out. Look, everybody, go out and make some news, and then we'll talk about you guys tomorrow.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right.
But try to stay out of jail, would you?
You can just get indicted and just beat the rap later. We'll report it as news, and then you don't have to go to jail in the end. Very good. Okay, you might have to get fingerprinted though. All right, thanks, Greg. We'll catch up with you tomorrow on the latest, and I will turn to, let's see, there's lots of write-ups today. I have two different takes on Donald Trump is plotting his next crime. We'll definitely want to check in on that because he does sometimes take notes on criminal conspiracies and let us know what he's going to do next. And let's read a little bit too after the break from the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel's reporting on what exactly went down with the indictments. And I love the way they're describing the crime. And I think what's important about the Wisconsin case is not only are they, taking their fake electors to task, but charging them with forgery, which was, like, I thought a January 7th type charge. Like, how could you not be charging these guys with forgery when you've seen that they're sending fake electoral certificates? It seems to be open and shut. Wisconsin, I think, is the first one that's actually doing it. Everybody's been charged with participating in this scheme to obstruct a federal proceeding, but forgery, that's good news. Good to see. All right, Greg, check in with you tomorrow. Yes is the answer to that one. Okay. Already on his way out the door. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. I got a hot tip over the break from Greg. I mentioned to you that I was excited about the fact that they were charged with forgery for producing these fake electoral certificates, and I didn't think that I had seen anybody else actually making that charge, even though I thought that was a pretty straightforward one. They faked up electoral college certificates, pretending not only that they were the electors, but that these were real and more official than the actual real electoral college certificates. And I mean, it's just like, that's one of the most outlandish crimes I could possibly think of in terms of federal election crime. Just the idea of like, well, what if candidate A wins the election, but we just produce official looking documents that say candidate B won the election and just try to pass those off as real. Like, wow, that's pretty stark. And it's about time somebody called him on it and said this is forgery. But Greg tells me that there's a different angle on this. It's actually a different forgery that they're talking about here, which is really kind of amazing. And if the story bears it out, you will agree that it is amazing too. And I think we can understand it. And it ties together with the comment I made earlier, in case you were waiting for me to substantiate the charge that Mike Roman was a particularly scummy scumbag. We can do that. And I saw people tweeting about this, or Blue Sky posting. I don't know. I think they call it skeet, but that's a dumb thing, and I can't. Tweet is somehow less dumb than that. I don't know why. It just is. And but people were isolating screen caps of, I guess, pictures that had illustrated the story, and he does a particularly nasty thing. in this, and it's related, I think, to the forgery that they're actually talking about. So here's the deal. We'll read through the article. Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, Molly Beck is the reporter. Wisconsin AG Josh, is it Kaul, K-A-U-L, or Cowell? I don't know. Kaul, maybe? Someone can tell me. Charges former Trump associates in fake elector scheme. Now, we've seen lots of states charge Trump associates in fake elector schemes. And like I said, to me, not enough discussion of the fact that the documents are fakes themselves. They're fake electors, that's true, and you need to charge them for that, and it's certainly a very serious crime. But to me, yeah, what about the forging of the documents? Well, okay, now we have that, but here's why. Wisconsin Attorney General Josh Kaul, God, I wish I knew. At any rate, on Tuesday, filed felony forgery charges against an aide and 2 attorneys who worked for former President Donald Trump in 2020 for their part in designing and executing a plan to overturn the election results of the 2020 presidential election by submitting false slates of electors for Trump. Now, I know Wisconsin has more than 3 electors, so right away I'm tipped off to something weird about this. There are 3 people charged with forgery. Why aren't all the people who contributed to forging the document charged with forgery? And the answer is because it's a different forgery. Now, right away, they offer you, here's a link to a related story. Here are the 10 people who participated in Wisconsin's fake elector scheme in 2020. How is it that there are 3 charged with forgery when all 10 of them forged this document? Now, the charges are the first to be filed by state prosecutors against anyone involved in the scheme that involved 10 Wisconsin Republicans meeting in the state capitol in December of 2020 to sign paperwork falsely claiming to be electors for Trump despite Trump's loss to Biden. And again, preparing that paperwork is a forgery. The paperwork is a forgery. The act of preparing it is a forgery. But wait, there's more. Kaul filed charges in Dane County Circuit Court against Kenneth Chesebro, a Wisconsin native and lead architect, they say, of the 2020 fake elector plan. Former Dane County Judge Jim Trupis, who represented Trump in Washington during the 2020 election, he too, I think, fairly described as one of the lead architects. I mean, I guess Chesebro is the lead legal architect of it. Trupis was just the guy who recruited Chesebro to the effort and sold the Trump organization on his participation. He's a smart guy. He'll be able to be a lead architect. And then finally, Mike Roman, a former Trump aide who allegedly delivered Wisconsin's slate of false elector paperwork to a Pennsylvania congressman's staffer in order to get them to Vice President Mike Pence on January 6, 2021. And I've already forgotten the particulars of that arrangement, but I mean, Wisconsin has got a Republican senator who was willing to do this, and didn't they try to get Ron Johnson to deliver Michigan's fake electoral votes at some point because no Michigan senator was willing to do it because they're Democrats? I was curious about that. Like, why isn't Ron Johnson involved in this effort to deliver Wisconsin's fake votes? Anyway, in a press conference outside of the state capitol on Tuesday, Kaul, and I really hope I'm pronouncing the name right, but because I'm doing it a lot, he declined to answer questions about how to pronounce his name or whether he was considering or ruling out charges against the 10 Wisconsin Republicans who signed the paperwork falsely claiming to be electors for Trump. And if I understand the hint that Greg gave me about that, there's an answer for that one too. I'm not going to comment on specific individuals, but what I can say is that this is an ongoing investigation and our decisions are going to be based on those facts and what the best interests of justice show, Kaul said. Biden beat Trump by about 21,000 votes in Wisconsin. Trump, pretty close, but it is a significant number of votes. Trump sought recounts in Dane and Milwaukee counties, which confirmed Biden's win. Trump sued, and the state Supreme Court upheld the results on a 4-3 vote on December 14th, 2020. I can't believe it was actually close. Less than an hour later, Democrats met in the state capitol to cast the state's 10 electoral votes for Biden. At the same time, the Republican fake electors gathered in another part of the Capitol to fill out paperwork claiming Trump had won. That's a forgery, of course. But you understand that. They submitted their filings to Congress, the National Archives, a federal judge, and then Wisconsin Secretary of State Doug LaFollette. Chesebro was in the room during the meeting. At the time, the fake electors said that they held the meeting to ensure the state's electoral votes were cast for Trump if a court later determined he was the true winner of the state. In other words, they wanted the protection that the Pennsylvania fake electors had afforded themselves of putting something, probably they wanted it in the document, and I think there's some evidence for that presented later in the article, that they wanted it in the document. We're not doing this because we are blatantly trying to substitute ourselves for the real electors in the hopes that you will simply become confused and award Wisconsin's electoral votes through the confusion to Donald Trump. We're saying that if someone later wins a case in which a court of competent jurisdiction says no, in fact, we rule that the winner of Wisconsin's electoral votes is Donald Trump, we want there to be a document ready to pull out and use on January 6th, lest Wisconsin's votes otherwise go uncounted on January 6th. That's what Pennsylvania fake electors, and they still are fake electors, but you can there's a qualitative difference between what they did and what most of the other people in the other states did. But it sounds like the Wisconsin 10 here wanted that protection. And what's interesting is they decide not to give it to them for some reason. Call charged Chesebro, Roman, Troupis, etc., with intent to forge a certificate of the votes of the 2020 electors from Wisconsin, knowing it to have been thus falsely made or altered, with one or more of the parties to the conspiracy doing an act to effect the objective of the conspiracy. That's not going to help anybody straighten anything out. But between at least as early as on or about, this is legalese, but here you go. As early as November 17th, 2020, and continuing through January 6th. This is so dumb. But you want to hear the whole full legalese of it? Between at least as early as on or about November 17th, 2020, and continuing through on or about January 6th, 2021, in Dane County, state of Wisconsin, and elsewhere, the above-named defendants, together with other individuals not charged in this complaint, agreed or combined with another with the intent to commit and for the purpose of committing the crime of uttering as genuine a forged writing or object, Call wrote in the complaint. And thank God he wrote it and didn't say it at the press conference, because it's really gross to even hear that pronounced out loud. Anyway, they were charged in violation of statutes that criminalize the forgery of public records or legal documents. Yeah, duh, it's about time. The complaint, filed by the Wisconsin Department of Justice Special Agent Mary Van Schoyk, if I've got that pronunciation right, Van Schoyck. Who knows? Anyway, this complaint relied on evidence from the fall of 2020 through delivery of the unappointed elector certificate, fake elector certificate, on January 6, 2021, when Chesebro and Troupis organized a plan to cast fake electoral votes. On December 12, 2020, texts that Chesebro and Roman sent about the language in the false elector certificates to be signed by Pence, no, I don't think so, in which Roman said, F these guys. Well, that I saw, but I don't know what it had to do with being signed by Pence. Anyway, Chesebro, in a message to Roman and an unidentified Republican on December 16th, acknowledged quote, things might have been different if we'd won Wisconsin. Okay, so he acknowledges here we didn't win Wisconsin, and suggested that the Trump campaign should weaponize the Electoral Count Act and put Biden in a no-win situation. Chesebro spelled out the plan in a memo dated November 18th, 2020, the same day Trump asked for recounts in Dane and Milwaukee counties. Chesebro sent the memo to Troopus. It's unclear whether Chesebro worked for Trump or someone else. Chesebro sent a second memo on the matter on December 9th, 2020, after state officials certified Biden as the winner in Wisconsin. Now, this article maybe doesn't have the screenshot of the text exchange, which is actually quite important. But this is pretty interesting all by itself here. And then, of course, the two memos that Chesebro sent around. The first one here that's referred to is interesting. One, that there are text messages from Chesebro saying, yeah, well, we didn't win Wisconsin, but it would be different if we had won Wisconsin. And then, of course, coming up with the idea not of, well, we should, these electors are just casting these votes if, in case a court realizes that we did win Wisconsin, then they'll be in place for use, and they're not for use under any other circumstances. That's highly questionable now. And then, of course, this memo from Chesebro that says, well, why don't we weaponize the Electoral Count Act? That is, how about if we just send a bunch of fake certificates and ask Mike Pence if he's willing to say, I don't know which ones are real, you guys decide. And that will be enough for us to try to pull this coup off. Well, in Wisconsin, the group of 10 Republicans who signed the paperwork included then Republican Party of Wisconsin Chairman Andrew Hitt and Wisconsin Elections Commissioner Bob Spindell, which is kind of amazing that the whole state's elections were overseen by a guy who was willing to sign a fake electoral certificate. That's bad news. In December, the group of false electors settled a civil lawsuit filed by the real Biden electors against them over their role in the scheme. That's a good idea, too. As part of the settlement, the false Trump electors acknowledged their actions were part of an attempt to overturn an election. According to communications released by Chesebro and Troopus as part of the lawsuit, Roman was in contact with Troopus on January 6th and U.S. Senator Ron Johnson's chief of staff in order to pass along the slates of Wisconsin's false electors to Pence, who ultimately rejected the offer. Is that what? So who rejected what offer? Ron Johnson's chief of staff did? Is that why they went to Pennsylvania instead? Court records show Chesebro, Troopus, and Roman are due in court on September 19th. In a one-word statement on the charges, Democratic Governor Tony Evers said, good. All right, well, that's the word for it. Johnson, of course, called the charges outrageous. Now Democrats are weaponizing Wisconsin's judiciary. Apparently, conservative lawyers advising clients is illegal under Democrat tyranny. Democrats are turning America into a banana republic, Johnson said in a post on social media platform Twitter, which they have a different name for now. And that's it for the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, which means that now I don't see the thing that Greg was tipping me off to. So, I don't know. Let's read another version of the story and see if there's a better or different kind of report on it. The Washington Post has got a report on the Wisconsin case as well. And I wonder if, this one, let me scan through and see if this is the one where they grabbed the texts from. But if not, then I'll have to check on social media to see if I can come up with that, or whether I think I reacted to those screenshots that will help me find them. Hold on just a second. I'll take a look. All right, I'm back. I didn't find them yet. And of course, now would be the perfect time for the Blue Sky deck to spin the pinwheel again and hold everything up, which is exactly what's happening. So let me open it up again and see if we can't make it work a little bit faster. But what I'm looking for is there was a screen capture of the text exchange, and it's really not working here at all, between Cheeseborough and Roman. And the issue is, where do I find my own replies here on this version of it? Okay, so I'm out of the deck. But there's a discussion between the two of them in which Cheeseborough, there it is. Okay, this is Quinta Jurecic was tweeting this around, or Blue Sky posting this. According to the Wisconsin indictment, there it is. That's where the screen cap appears in the actual indictment document. Mike Roman potentially got a whole lot of people indicted. They haven't been indicted yet, but the Wisconsin 10 here, the 10 electors are potentially in trouble by refusing to alter the fake electoral certificates to include conditional language like they used in Pennsylvania, right? Electors in Pennsylvania and New Mexico, who I guess in New Mexico they didn't include this hedge, but in New Mexico they haven't been charged so far because nobody even bothered to think for a moment. I don't know why they haven't been charged, but nobody thought for a moment that New Mexico had been won by Trump. But all right, Pennsylvania is the one that famously included the little caveat saying this is only to be used in the case in which a court rules that Trump won Pennsylvania and ought to be credited with its electoral college votes. And if that happens, then we're signing this document so that there's a document to be used on January 6th. And that is what so far has kept them from being charged in all of this. However, as it says in the indictment here, on December 12th, 2020, defendant Cheeseborough and defendant Roman exchanged messages about the language in the certificates to be signed by the Trump-Pence electors, as pictured below, with messages from defendant Cheeseborough on the right and responses from defendant Roman on the left. And so with that as our guide, we have Cheeseborough saying, Mike, I think the language at the start of the certificate should be changed in all the states. And that's interesting too. That means that Roman, like Cheeseborough, is involved in the efforts in all the states, not just in Wisconsin. So I think that they should be changed in all the states. Let's look at the language carefully. So I think they should all be changed with the same cautionary language like Pennsylvania. Roman says, I don't. Why not? Of course, that's because it's a tip that they should be disregarded, right? If it says in there, this is only intended to be used if a court rules that Trump won the state that we represent, and no court has done that, then they won't count. No one will have reason to count those votes. They will say, look, it says right here that it's only supposed to be used in this situation, and we're not in that situation. So don't put it in there. Let's instead make it look like as much like a real certificate as we can. And at the very least, we can ask Mike Pence to throw his hands up and say he can't tell the difference between the two. So I think the certificate should include that in every state, says Cheeseborough. Roman says, I don't. Cheeseborough answers, I can help with drafting the language in a couple hours. And Roman's answer is, F these guys. Now, I'm not even sure who the guys are, but if the guys are the fake electors, and the fake electors are saying that they want the protection of this language and we should give it to them. Well, F them, says Mike Roman. First of all, that's like F your co-conspirators. That's just a message that says, well, when the right day comes, every one of you 10 should stab me in prison because we're all going to jail and I'm the reason. In Pennsylvania, they're not even charged. But in Wisconsin, you stand to be charged. In fact, you've already been sued by the real electors, and you're probably going to face forgery charges as well for participating in this scheme. And it's my fault. I told Cheeseborough not to do it. And I don't know why Cheeseborough listened to me, but he did. So I thought that was pretty amazing all by itself, too. But what Greg had tipped me off to, and I'm going to see whether the Washington Post story has got it in it, it says, well, what he told me, and I don't know, I haven't seen it yet anywhere, and now I need to find it, and I'll have to go back to him and ask him where he found this, was that I guess the electors, the fake electors, clearly, according to the messages pictured in the indictment, they must have spoken to Cheeseborough at some point. Or else Cheeseborough had an attack of conscience and said we should just do this like we did for the Pennsylvania electors, fake electors, just to afford them some protection. But it sounds like the Wisconsin fake electors said we would like this protection as well. Please put it in the document. And after disagreeing about it with Roman, they obviously, Cheeseborough, I guess, who prepared the document, didn't put that language in the Wisconsin fake elector certificate. And Greg was saying that it may be the case that they opted then, the fake electors said, well, if it doesn't have it in there, then we're not going to sign the certificate. And that Roman and Cheeseborough instead used their signatures from I didn't even know there was such a thing. Maybe there is such a certificate. I'll have to look back and see whether I've ever seen anything like it. But as sort of a sign-in sheet, essentially. Sign this document to show that you were here today to serve in your capacity as a fake elector, normally as a real elector. And you sign in the sign-in sheet. Now that you're here and you've been sworn in, please sign this document that says you are the electors and that the electoral vote should go to Donald Trump. And, well, if they don't put the caveat in, we're not signing. And the allegation here is the story that Greg heard was that they did refuse to sign and that Cheeseborough and or Roman decided, well, we'll just copy their signatures from the sign-in sheet and paste them onto the fake electoral college certificate. And they are the three, therefore, charged with forgery, not for forging the document itself, but for forging the signatures of the fake electors on the fake certificate, which is a crime above and beyond all of this, and really even more amazing than the fake electors scheme, if there is such if it's even possible. Let me see what the Washington Post has to say about it. Former Trump aides charged in Wisconsin over 2020 electoral plot. We got that. Cheeseborough's among the three aides charged. The subheader says, who are we reading here, by the way? Patrick Marley wrote this piece. The charges of the first in Wisconsin related to the meeting of electors. Prosecutors have separately charged Republicans who were involved in similar efforts in other states, Arizona, Michigan, Nevada, and Georgia. The Attorney General charged the Trump campaign aides, Roman and Cheeseborough and Troupis, with one felony count each of conspiracy to commit forgery, according to the criminal complaints. Conspiracy to commit forgery. Is that it? All right. Well, then some comments from the press conference, which doesn't tell us very much. If convicted, each faces a maximum sentence of 6 years in prison and a $10,000 fine. That wasn't in the other one. No response to messages to them here. Retelling the story of how he lost Wisconsin, and the state Supreme Court rejected Trump's efforts to reverse the results on December 14th, the day that presidential electors were supposed to meet. An hour after the ruling, 10 Republicans gathered in the state capitol to sign paperwork claiming they were the state's true electors. Trump allies held similar meetings in 6 other states and then sent official-looking paperwork claiming to be their state's true electors to Congress, the National Archives, and others. That's forgery all by itself. Trump's supporters used those filings to falsely claim the outcome of the 2020 election was in doubt and try to prevent Congress from certifying the results, culminating in the attacks of January 6th. Cheeseborough helped devise the overall plan and documented the Wisconsin meeting on his cell phone, according to photos and records. He wrote memos to Troupis soon after the election and provided the framework for having Republicans meet in states that Trump lost. Roman, who served as Trump's director of Election Day operations in 2020. So what's he doing involved in post-election day operations? I don't know. Helped coordinate elector meetings around the country, according to documents. Cheeseborough was charged last year with racketeering and other crimes in Georgia as part of a deal He pled guilty in October to a felony count of conspiring to file false documents. Roman has been charged with racketeering and other crimes in Georgia and conspiracy, forgery, and other crimes in Arizona. There's a forgery charge. He's pleaded not guilty in Georgia, expected to do the same on Friday in Arizona. 2 days before the Republicans met as electors, Cheeseborough told Roman in a text message that he thought they should change the wording. There you go. In the paperwork for the would-be electors. The issue arose after Republicans in Pennsylvania said they wanted the documents to be that way. Roman told Cheeseborough he didn't support changing the language for other states on December 12th text message, and then said, F these guys. I wonder if we can figure out exactly who the guys are supposed to be. All right, we got to take a quick break. Maybe a little saltwater gargle would benefit us all, and then we can come back and see what the conclusion of this story is, and maybe throw in something else for fun. Hi everybody, it's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time, just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and patreon.com, patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We got one more segment to get through, and let's see if we can get to the bottom of the confusion over who forged what and why they're being charged in the way they're being charged. 2 days before Republicans met as electors, that would be December 12th, 2020, Cheeseborough told Roman in a text message that he thought they should change the wording in all the states. And they politely say that Roman told Cheeseborough he didn't support changing the language. They cleaned that up quite a bit. In a text message the next day, I wonder if I should open up the actual criminal complaints at some point. Well, we can't read that on the air. I'm going to have to digest that off the air. At any rate, in a text message the next day, Cheeseborough told Roman that Vice President Mike Pence, or a senator acting as president of the Senate, like maybe Grassley, they had in mind. Remember all that confusion about whether or not he was saying he was actually going to do something like that? Whether or not they could refuse to count the electoral votes for some states and push their legislatures to decide who should serve as electors, according to the complaints. The effort could flip the presidential election from Biden to Trump. That's the possible endgame I saw early on, which is why the December 14th vote is so critical, Cheeseborough texted Roman. In an email days earlier, Cheeseborough credited Troupis with the first outlining of the plan to have the Republicans meet as electors, according to prosecutors. 2 days after the Republicans met as electors, Troupis, Cheeseborough, and others met with Trump in the Oval Office. So that would be December 16th. Days later, Troupis told Cheeseborough that, quote, nothing about our meeting with the president can be shared with anyone, according to the complaints. Oh, well. They can be subpoenaed, however. The complaints detailed the planning that went into the Wisconsin meeting and the extensive efforts to get the paperwork to Washington when it didn't show up quickly enough through the mail. Aha. But the complaints do not mention Troupis's efforts to get a copy of the paperwork to Pence through Senator Ron Johnson on January 6th. Why not? I don't know. An aide to Pence that day told Johnson's chief of staff not to hand the documents over to Pence. That I remember. On social media, Johnson called the charges outrageous, writing that Democrats are weaponizing Wisconsin's judiciary. Remember all of that whole dumb thing from the other report. Wisconsin's attorney general took a slower and more targeted approach to his investigation compared to those in other states. I mean, it's almost 4 years later. Yeah. Unlike his counterparts, Call did not charge any of the 10 Wisconsin Republicans who signed the elector paperwork, and instead went after those who arranged for them to meet. That is interesting. Among those who signed the paperwork, it says they signed it, was Andrew Hitt, the chairman of the state Republican Party at the time. In December, he said he and the others, quote, were tricked and misled into participating in what became the alternate elector scheme, fake elector scheme, and would never have taken any actions had we known that there were ulterior reasons beyond preserving an ongoing legal strategy, unquote. So, that's what leads Cheeseborough to say that he thinks the fake electors want, and that they should give to them in all states the same cautionary language that they used in Pennsylvania. Hitt made the comment after reaching a settlement with two of the state's true electors who filed a lawsuit against Republicans. Under the settlement, Hitt and the others agreed not to serve as electors any time Trump is on the ballot, and told the National Archives they were rescinding their false paperwork claiming to be electors. That's interesting, too. Troupas and Cheeseborough reached a separate settlement in March in that lawsuit. As part of the agreement, they released hundreds of pages of documents about the endeavor. The county clerks, whose areas were targeted for recounts by Trump, praised the decision to bring charges, saying they would deter others from trying to overturn elections. Attempting to engage in insurrection or coups are deeply un-American and should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law, said a statement from Dane County Clerk Scott McDonnell, a Democrat, and Milwaukee County Clerk George Christensen, also a Democrat. Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers, of course, is the one who said, well, good about the whole thing. No discussion about anything of copying and pasting the signatures here. I'm going to have to ask. That might be a misunderstanding, or, sometimes you think you saw something in passing and then you can't come up with the documentation of it. And so you end up saying, well, I don't know, that doesn't sound right, but I'm sure I saw it somewhere and I'll keep looking and I'll keep asking him about that. That seems pretty interesting all by itself, but I don't know if neither of these reports support that take, but I see maybe where the germ of it comes from. Andrew Hitt's claim that they were tricked and misled into participating. They weren't tricked into signing their names on a sign-in sheet, and then there's no evidence of that happening here in these two articles, of them signing a different document and having the signature reproduced on the fake electoral certificate. It sounds like they signed it willingly. They just thought that there should be the caveat from the Pennsylvania document included in theirs, and it wasn't. And they thought either that it would be, or that it was unnecessary that it be included for some reason, and that it was these three guys who tricked them into believing that they would be okay in doing this, even without that language, which is pretty underhanded all by itself. Okay. Another bird going crazy right outside the window. That's nice and adds a pleasant air to the proceedings of the day, even though the topics are rather unpleasant. All right, let's see. I got a couple of other fun and interesting stories to share with you, and they are, let's see, some of them are rather scary and others are rather ridiculous. Let's see if I can't make some sense of which ones to go next. I'm going to have to open some up and identify what they are in order to make sure. Okay. Here's one shared with me, I think, by Scott, who sent me this from, I guess it's originally, or where he found it was in the MSN site, citing it from the Cleveland Plain Dealer. Our readers, it says, have high anxiety and real fear of retaliation, mainly from Donald Trump supporters, if they use political yard signs. Well, political yard signs are a big deal on this show. And they don't vote, as Greg loves to point out, but they can, I guess, or people worry that they can get you in trouble. And I mean, given the fact that Justice Alito's wife has decided to fly an insurrection treason flag in response to someone else's yard sign, I guess they can get you in trouble. And I've got a pretty good idea who they might get you in trouble with as well. Another story waiting in the wings for a day where we'll perhaps have more time to discuss the lengthier report. But a few days before Donald Trump was convicted of breaking the law 34 different ways in trying to hide his tryst with a sex worker from the voters, meaning before the county erupted anew into polarized screeching, I, Chris Quinn of the Cleveland Plain Dealer, asked 2,400 people whether they fear putting up political yard signs this year. That's a good question. It's just that the premise of the meeting isn't a particularly good one. I don't know if it was a meeting or a poll or what. But no, he wasn't convicted of breaking the law 34 different ways, trying to hide his tryst. He was convicted of 34 counts of 2 or 3 different ways of breaking the law, but repetitively in most cases. So I don't know. That's a weird phrasing thing, but it's actually got nothing to do with it except to point out that these are trying times. So these 2,400, they subscribe for free to text messages that I, Chris Quinn, send out. How fun is that? I send out about the November, when do you send them out? I send out weekly, each weekday, daily, about stories we have in the works or questions we seek to answer, or we seek to have them answer for us, more accurately. More than a quarter of them responded, which I'm pretty sure is a new record and is an astounding level of engagement. It's not a scientific poll. It wouldn't be useful for anything other than, gathering a few quotes. He asked 2,400 people. A quarter of them actually answered. So, I asked 2,400 people, and almost 2,000 of them didn't say anything. So, I don't know. The methodology is not great. But the main takeaway is that he found some number of people who said that they are beyond anxious about the November election and where this nation is headed. Again, this was before Trump became a convicted felon. And I asked, if I asked now, the responses would likely be even more passionate, he's guessing. Although, wasn't particularly passionate that only a quarter of them responded. When readers offer a range of thoughtful responses to questions we ask, we share them. We are grateful that they take the time to write. Prompted, but they do take the time to write. These are your neighbors and coworkers, although increasingly we hear from people outside the region and state. I've promised from the start to keep all responses anonymous if we publish them. We had more than 630 responses, far too many to include in the story, but what follows is a fair representation of all of them. And you can actually join that list if you want to get those texts from him, and he includes a link for how you can do that. So let's see, where have we? So here are a couple of answers that he got from people, which I think is interesting. Well, this person says, this is not a hypothetical for us. Are you worried about putting up yard signs? Will you find yourself in trouble with your neighbors? We already experienced harassment in 2020 just for putting a Biden sign in front of our property in Medina County. We received nasty, threatening letters in our mailbox and dirty masks and garbage dumped in our driveway. The sign was shot up and then stolen a few days later. I wonder if it was one of those larger signs, or just the regular yard signs. Shooting a regular sized yard sign is, I don't know, somehow dumb, for one thing. But anyway, we got another one, and the same thing. And when we had shots fired at the house, we ultimately decided it would be wiser to keep a lower profile and forgo the yard sign. Imagine, we were threatened with violence and subjected to frightening harassment just for putting out a simple yard sign supporting our preferred candidate in America. There is an undercurrent of violence that has been unleashed in this country, and given what we've already experienced in 2020, I cannot fathom how much worse it will be this year. Suffice to say, there will be no yard signs in our property this fall. So the terrorists have won, is what I would tell you about that, unfortunately. No signs for me, says someone else. I fear retaliation. Not a good idea, in my opinion, for either Democrats or Republicans to post signs. Too much polarization already. I like that. Now it's both sides. Republicans shot the Biden sign. Somebody else, of course, is now speaking. But yeah, both sides should hide their preferences because reasons. Are there a lot of reports of Democrats riding by and shooting Trump signs? I haven't heard a great deal about that, actually. Knocking them down, maybe? I don't know. Spray painting them, stealing them, possibly. Anyway, he says, too much polarization already. Won't change people's minds, in my opinion. I think that's not actually true. But politics should not define you as a person. And I don't think they do, just because you have a sign. The sign does this, though. For many people reading it, it will, it shouldn't define you as a person. You shouldn't let it define you as a person. You get to define you as a person. But other people also apparently get to define you as a person. And so don't put up the signs because they might allow other people to define you as a person. I don't know if that's particularly sound logic. Anyway, let me skip to another person's response here. I will not put out signs this year or post anything on social media where everyone can see and track my values and opinions. My mother was a Holocaust survivor, and I know what happens when tyrants and bigots take over. I'm worried what will happen if Trump wins or if he doesn't. In all fairness, not really, just Republicans doing stupid things, says this other person, because of varying political views. I'm a registered Republican and I live in a decent area, but I still had a Trump sign stolen from my yard. Once my sign was up, neighbors whom I only knew casually, who would wave back at me as they drove by or stop to chat while walking their dogs, totally changed how they interacted with me after my politics went public. Subtle change, but pretty damn obvious. Not exactly the same thing as shooting your house, but okay. Sad to say, but the hate and disdain goes both ways. It does, but it comes with bullets from the other side. I try to stay respectful and recognize that each person is entitled to their opinion. Wish I could say that about some of my Democrat friends and neighbors, but maybe they're upset and angry with you because you have a sign from the side that shoots people and houses and signs, and that has something to do with it. All right. I think you get the idea, but there does go on and on. There's quite a few of them here. And honestly, we won't finish if we're reading each of these, but it's very interesting. And I recommend it to you as an interesting sampling of what people are thinking, even if their thoughts aren't particularly strong every time. Let's see. Other stories to bring to you. You know what? I'm going to tip you off to another story that I have waiting in the wings. That also will take a very long time to read, and we aren't going to get all the way through. But I wonder whether there isn't some connective tissue between them, and you'll see why as soon as I tell you that about this story. This is something that my brother Mark sent to me, and is Reuters, a Reuters piece by Aram Roston, who writes the piece titled "The Proud Boys Are Back." Did you know that they were coming back? How the far-right group is rebuilding to rally behind Trump. And, it's a quick reminder that there are people who will openly say, like everyone else in the previous story says, well, this isn't really what's going on. People are doing this stuff, but no one is admitting, I'm the one shooting your sign. I'm going to shoot your sign if you put it up, so don't put it up. The Proud Boys, though, actually do fill that role. A lot of those guys more than happy to let everyone know that they're the ones threatening and intimidating, and what are you going to do about it? The Proud Boys, the subheader says, say recruitment is growing, and they're ready to serve again as Donald Trump's unofficial protection force. And we are told to be aware that the story contains offensive language, so we'll have our censoring horn at the ready here. A dark SUV cruised past former President Donald Trump's supporters near his Bedminster Golf Club in New Jersey on a windy April afternoon. Billowing from the vehicle were 3 flags, one for the Trump campaign and 2 others with the initials PB, and it's not peanut butter, PB, the insignia of the far-right Proud Boys movement. Through the open windows, 3 Proud Boys flashed the OK sign. Remember that one? With their hands, a gesture often associated with white supremacy and the far right. Trump's fans cheered. 4 men dressed in the signature black and yellow shirts of the Proud Boys spilled out of the SUV and began glad-handing the crowd like homecoming heroes. The Proud Boys are back. 4 years after the failed effort to overturn Trump's 2020 electoral defeat, the violent all-male extremist group that led the storming of the Congress on January 6, 2021, is rebuilding and regaining strength as Trump campaigns to return to the White House, according to interviews with 8 Proud Boys, 2 U.S. and law enforcement officials, and 4 experts who track the group's online activity. Since the January 6th Capitol riot, 4 former Proud Boys leaders have been convicted in federal court of seditious conspiracy, each sentenced to 15 or more years in prison. At least another 70 members were charged with participating in the violence, but that crackdown hasn't stopped the Proud Boys. Some Proud Boys say they are preparing to emerge once again as a physical force for Trump, drawn to his hardline nationalism and convinced their leaders will be pardoned if he wins. Trump himself promises to pardon convicted January 6th rioters if he's elected. After last Thursday's historic guilty verdict against Trump, an Ohio Proud Boys chapter vowed, quote, war, and posted a video of Proud Boys street brawls that ended with the message, fighting solves everything. A Miami chapter said, now more than ever, we are recruiting. Some posted images of the upside-down American flag, symbolizing the Stop the Steal movement that falsely claims Trump won the 2020 election. One Proud Boy told Reuters that America is in a period of calm before the storm. So, pretty overt threats, and of course saying we're going to have war, and fighting solves everything. The group's main Telegram channel, however, posted a message urging Proud Boys to stay calm and not get drawn into a trap and risk arrest. Not yet, anyway. Trump is, of course, getting railroaded, but we will not be walking into any honeypots over this, they said. In recent weeks, the group has become more prominent at pro-Trump events, highlighting the risk of renewed violence in this year's presidential election. Dozens of Proud Boys, some in body armor and helmets, and I really don't know why the police allow that, except for the fact that many of the police sympathize with them or are even Proud Boys themselves. But they keep letting them do it. Dozens of Proud Boys, some in body armor and helmets, marked the 3rd anniversary of the January 6th insurrection with a show of force at the State House in Columbus, Ohio. On April 20th, nearly a dozen gathered at a rally for Trump's Republican campaign in Wilmington, North Carolina. More recently, groups of Proud Boys from 2 chapters mixed with tens of thousands of Trump supporters at a campaign rally in Wildwood, New Jersey in May. On a boardwalk near the entrance of the Wildwood rally, several Proud Boys identified themselves as members of the New Jersey State Chapter, they called it. One said they were there to provide security and stop agitators from disrespecting or assaulting everybody, which of course wasn't happening. Inscribed on his wraparound sunglasses were the initials POYB, short apparently for Proud of Your Boy. He wore a ring with the initials PB and a black shirt with a yellow laurel wreath of the Proud Boys. That's the Fred Perry logo. 3 men from another chapter greeted them, their faces hidden by gator masks because of how proud they are, of course. The reemergence of the Proud Boys at Trump's political rallies and events coincides with polls showing a majority of Americans fearing political violence will flare around November's election. It also comes when Trump's use of incendiary rhetoric is inspiring his supporters to target his opponents, including judges, prosecutors, and political rivals, in a wave of threats that's unprecedented in modern American politics. Trump himself has not ruled out the possibility of political violence if he loses in November. If we don't win, it depends, he said when asked by Time magazine in April if he expected violence after the election. If he's jailed or put under house arrest, I'm not sure the public would stand for it, he said in a Fox News interview that aired on Sunday. At a certain point, there's a breaking point. That would be the same point, of course. Before the last election, Trump told the Proud Boys to stand back and stand by when he was, of course, asked to tell them to stand down. 3 months later, federal prosecutors say the group's leaders plotted and led the insurrection at the U.S. Capitol. Trump's baseless, rigged election claims inspired the gathering, and Trump himself urged the assembled crowd to march on the Capitol as Congress certified Democrat Joe Biden's victory. A spokesperson for Trump did not respond to questions for the story, by the way, about his rhetoric, January 6th, and the Proud Boys. As the Proud Boys regroup, They've made changes designed to make them less vulnerable to law enforcement scrutiny, including doing away with layers of top leadership. Well, that layer of top leadership, of course, is in prison, so I don't know about doing away with it. But anyway, Proud Boys now operate with self-governing chapters in more than 40 states with little apparent central coordination, members said. And in the main, most Proud Boys are just a bunch of annoying and usually overweight chumps, but there are several dangerous individuals among them from whom they all take their inspiration. While the group's structure has changed, its Canadian founder, by the way, remains an inspirational figure to today's Proud Boys. Gavin McInnes, a British-born and Canadian far-right commentator who lives in New York, get out, announced his resignation from the Proud Boys in 2018 so that they wouldn't blame him for anything. But he remains deeply involved with the group, according to interviews with Proud Boys. When there are disputes, he mediates, one Proud Boy said. J. Daniel Hull, a lawyer who has represented Proud Boys, agreed. They'll take a lot of cues from Gavin McInnes. Over 3 interviews with Reuters, McInnes said he is not seeking a leadership role, but that he communicates regularly with the members, makes an appearance at some events, and tries to resolve infighting. Why would there be infighting? I don't know. Some Proud Boys affectionately refer to him as a godfather. After McInnes stepped down, his successor, Enrique Tarrio, raised the Proud Boys' profile, pulling them from the fringe of the far right toward the center of Trump-era Republican politics. He didn't change their orientation. He just centered them in a fascist movement. Tarrio, a Floridian of Afro-Cuban descent, was sentenced last September to 22 years in prison for seditious conspiracy. Womp womp. Defined, of course, as an effort by 2 or more people to overthrow the government or use force to hinder its operations, and other charges related to the Capitol riot. He has appealed. 2 criminal defense attorneys for Tarrio did not respond to emailed questions or phone calls. In the past, McInnes, Tarrio, and a group of leaders dubbed elders spoke publicly on the group's behalf, set the agenda, and guided its confrontations with left-wing groups around the country. They sat atop a formal structure and could disband Proud Boys chapters or expel members. Now members say the chapters are largely independent of each other and ban communications with the media. Most members who spoke to Reuters for this report did so on condition of anonymity. The group's resilience has surprised some extremism experts. The amazing thing is that so many people from the Proud Boys can be in jail and you have these active chapters, said Heidi Birsch, co-founder of the nonprofit Global Project Against Hate and Extremism. Traditionally, when the head of a neo-Nazi or white supremacist group goes to jail or dies, the organization will collapse, but that doesn't seem to be happening with the Proud Boys because it's mostly about them just running around saying "F you" to people they don't like, and there's not much real activity. But come election time, that may change. The FBI and Department of Homeland Security declined to comment on the group's activities and whether authorities are monitoring the Proud Boys. Previously unreported 2022 Department of Homeland Security intelligence reports reviewed by Reuters referred to domestic violent extremists identifying themselves as Proud Boys who are primarily engaged in violence against law enforcement and ideological opponents. It's not against the law to be a member, and most Proud Boys haven't done anything illegal, it added. You can be as big a Proud Boy supporter as you want in this country as long as you're not planning criminal activity, said former FBI agent Mark Saylor, who investigated the Proud Boys before retiring at the end of 2021. But he added, after the Capitol riots, there would be no excuse this time not to take them seriously. And there's a section here we'll read a little bit of before we depart for the day called Tip of the Spear. At Tarrio's criminal trial, one Proud Boy described the group as foot soldiers of the right. Today, glorification of violence remains a core feature of the Proud Boys, as does unwavering support of Trump, according to interviews with current members. The Proud Boys describe their ideology as Western chauvinism, which they say is a deep embrace of Western civilization and traditions, except for the ones about not resorting to violence for no reason whatsoever, or even for good reasons, and that things ought to be settled at the ballot box, right? That's what Western values supposedly, even among Republicans, are. But Proud Boys say, well, actually, we should be beating people because of the glory of Western tradition. Anyway, critics say the group uses the term Western rather than white to veil its racism, a charge the Proud Boys defenders deny. While the Proud Boys claim the group is a fraternal organization, in practice it promotes street violence against the left and trolls liberals, Democrats, feminists, transgender activists, and others they oppose. A handbook, they have them, outlining Proud Boys rituals was revealed by prosecutors in 2023 as evidence in Tarrio's trial. The manual says that becoming a high-ranking Proud Boy requires, quote, engaging in a major conflict, including, quote, serious physical fights or, quote, getting arrested. A defense lawyer in the case argued that some of the document was merely sarcastic and politically incorrect. Well, it's all that. And then, let's see. So, a clip of it. It's pretty dumb looking, but there you have it. As you get to the fourth degree, I guess, being a senior Proud Boy. A Proud Boy prayer on an active website promoting a New Jersey chapter of the group puts it this way. And we'll play our outro music and get the hell out of here. Strengthen us, brothers, with power and hard fists to help us defend the right and defeat the wrong. The same site says the Proud Boys don't support acts that violate criminal law, but in fact they do. Of course, federal prosecutors and the U.S. congressional investigation both named the Proud Boys as crucial plotters and leaders of the January 6th attack. The Proud Boys lined up behind Donald Trump and were ready to commit violence on his behalf. Assistant U.S. Attorney Connor Mulrow said in court, these defendants saw themselves as Donald Trump's army, fighting to keep their preferred leader in power no matter what the law or the courts had to say about it. Publicly, members of the group deny that the Proud Boys orchestrated the January 6th violence, and instead they characterized the riot as spontaneous and their leaders as innocent. Privately, however, some Proud Boys acknowledge that the group drove the events of the day. Without the Proud Boys, January 6th didn't happen. One longtime member of the group told Reuters the Proud Boys were the tip of the spear. Of course, up in Canada, where Gavin McGuinness, I guess, is not originally from, but is a Canadian citizen, apparently. They have recognized the Proud Boys as a extremist organization, a terrorist group. So, very interesting. Clear thinking on behalf of the Canadians. All right, time for us to hand things over to Justice Putnam for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, for me to give my voice a little bit of a rest. We'll be back tomorrow with Greg Dworkin, another roundup, and yet more stories of this sort.
From networksradio.com, you have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
Well, Justice happens to know that Trump's got another off-the-wall posting spree of bizarre and unhinged videos of himself, and it's compared with the posts and actions by President Biden. We'll give you a pretty clear contrast there. And a man who attacked a Muslim state representative outside a prayer service in Connecticut, sentenced, hooray, to 5 years in prison. Good riddance. Next.